Okay, so you're looking to cut through the noise, get smart on what really matters.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do here. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, actually. It's an idea from a Harvard Business Review article, Pygmalion in Management by J. Sterling Livingston.
Right. And it's a classic, but, the insights are still incredibly relevant. It digs into these, well, often unconscious ways managers really shape how their teams perform, their careers, everything.
Yeah, it's this fundamental dynamic, isn't it? Like, think back to Pygmalion, the play. Eliza Doolittle,
Hmm.
how she transforms based on Professor Higgins's expectations. Livingston sort of draws a parallel there.
Exactly. He suggests managers are a bit like that. Employees can rise or sometimes fall to meet the level of belief shown in them, high or low.
So the mission for this deep dive, then, is really to get our heads around how these expectations from managers actually become like self-fulfilling prophecies. And, what does that actually mean for us, for managers, for employees? Precisely. I mean, at its core, this self-fulfilling prophecy idea in management is, well, it's straightforward but powerful.
Hmm.
High expectations from a manager. You often see superior results.
Right.
Low expectations.
Hmm.
Performance tends to dip. It sounds simple, maybe, but it's a really deep-rooted thing.
It feels almost intuitive, doesn't it? You see it elsewhere. Like education's a big one.
Definitely.
A teacher believes in a student, really believes, and suddenly that student unlocks potential they didn't even know was there. Livingston saying that same power dynamic is absolutely at play in management.
It is, and it's crucial to understand it's not just thinking positive, it's about how those expectations actually change behavior, create these feedback loops.
Okay.
To really see it in action, there's a great example of this experiment back in 1961 at Metropolitan Life Insurance.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that one. Alfred Oberlander. He was the
Right.
manager there. And he noticed something about the top performing agencies.
Yes, he had a theory about why some teams just clicked, so he set up this test.
How did he do it? What was the setup?
Well, Oberlander grouped his insurance agents into 3 teams. It's based on his perception, really, of their abilities. He put his best agents, his super staff, with his top assistant manager.
Okay, the A team.
Right. Then an average group with an average manager. And finally, a group he saw as lower producers, paired with a less experienced manager.
And the results. I'm guessing they were pretty clear cut. The super staff expected to win. They did.
Oh, yeah. Big
Like,
time. Their productivity just soared way beyond what was typical. It pulled the whole agency's numbers up significantly. It
wow.
was a really clear demonstration. You expect excellence, you provide the belief, maybe the right resources, performance follows. That belief really does seem to fuel performance.
But there's the flip side, isn't there? What about the other groups, the ones not expected to be stars?
Yeah, and that's just as important. The group of lower producers, the ones expected to struggle, well, their performance actually declined
Oh, really? Even further.
even further. And their turnover rate went up too. More people left. It just shows how low expectations can create this sort of negative drag. It hits output, hits morale, commitment.
Doubt deflates performance. That's a tough lesson.
But wait, there was something interesting with the average unit, wasn't there? They didn't quite fit the pattern.
Yes. This is where it gets really fascinating. So the district manager, Oberlander, he expected, average results from this middle group. But their assistant manager, she had other ideas.
Okay.
She just refused to accept that average label. She built this incredible belief in her team, constantly telling them they could compete with the super staff, challenging them.
And did it work? Did that belief translate?
It absolutely did. Their productivity climbed steadily year after year. Percentage-wise, their increase was actually higher than the super staff's, even if their total volume didn't quite match up.
That's amazing.
It really hammers home how powerful a manager's conviction can be. It wasn't about the initial label, it was about her belief overriding that label. So it wasn't just raw talent then. It was the manager's unwavering belief that unlocked something. Makes you wonder, though, was this just a one-off? Does other research back this up?
Good question. And Livingston definitely brings in more evidence. He doesn't just hang it all on this one study. Take the AT&T research by Berlew and Hall.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember that one. They tracked management trainees for a while, didn't they?
Exactly. Followed them over several years. And they found this really strong link between how much the company initially seemed to believe in these trainees, the expectations they set early on, and how successful those trainees actually were later in their careers.
So, higher initial expectations correlated with better performance down the line.
Strongly correlated, yeah. Things like salary progression, performance reviews over 5 years. It all lined up with those initial expectations. It suggests those early signals a company sends are incredibly impactful long term.
Wow, that really says something about those first jobs, those first impressions. And Livingston points out this isn't exactly a brand new concept either, right? He mentioned some earlier stuff.
He does. He references Albert Mull's clinical work from, gosh, over a century ago now.
Yeah.
Mull observed how people tend to behave in ways they think are expected of them.
Mm.
And then there's Robert Rosenthal's work, which is maybe more famous. Those experiments showing the self-fulfilling prophecy in schools.
Right, the teacher expectation studies, where telling a teacher certain kids were bloomers, even randomly, actually led to those kids showing greater gains.
Precisely that. It seems this power of expectation just keeps popping up.
Hmm.
Livingston also mentions a Head Start program studies similar results. Preschoolers learned faster when teachers were led to believe they had high potential.
Okay.
Even in medicine, The placebo effect is partly about expectation. And sometimes, sadly, a doctor's pessimistic outlook might even hinder recovery. Expectations matter across the board.
So, okay, we've established high expectations can be this incredible engine for success, but the flip side, low expectations. It sounds like that creates a really damaging cycle.
It really can. Livingston talks about this pattern of failure. When managers signal, even subtly, that they don't have much faith in someone, it hits their self-confidence hard.
Makes sense. I mean, if your boss doesn't think you can do it, it's tough to keep believing in yourself, isn't it? How do people typically react?
Well, often, they might start avoiding tasks where they think they might fail, which of course kind of reinforces the manager's negative view.
Right.
They might pull back on effort, become hesitant, less likely to volunteer ideas or take initiative, and ultimately that just increases the chances of the very failure the manager seemed to anticipate. It's a downward spiral.
He uses that example, doesn't he? The bank managers on the West Coast whose lending limits were cut back.
Yes, that's a good illustration. The message was basically, we don't trust your judgment with larger amounts.
Okay.
So first they got overly cautious,
Right.
didn't want to make any mistakes, business growth suffered. But then, maybe out of frustration or fear of being seen as ineffective, they swung the other way. They started approving riskier loans than they perhaps should have, trying too hard, maybe. And that, unfortunately, led to more losses, which just confirmed the initial low expectation. It wasn't necessarily about their core ability, but a reaction to that perceived lack of trust.
It shows how expectations drive behavior with real consequences. And a key point Livingston makes is, managers don't always have to say negative things out loud, do they? Sometimes it's unspoken.
Absolutely critical point. Managers often communicate expectations non-verbally, even when they think they're putting on a good face,
How does that work?
Things like, well, just not engaging much, being a bit cold or distant, infrequent feedback or feedback that's only critical, it all sends a message. I don't expect much from you, or I'm not invested in your successes.
He tells that story about the agent in the Rockaway low-performing unit who quit. The manager said all the polite things.
Right, sorry to see you go. But she knew. She could feel he was actually relieved. His relief, his lack of effort to keep her, spoke louder than his words. His real expectations came through.
And then there's the other side, the manager who tried to copy the Rockaway setup, separating teams, but it didn't work. Why not?
Because, as Livingston points out, the manager's underlying belief wasn't there. He might have changed the structure, but his negative opinions of the lower group were still obvious in his day-to-day interactions.
So you can't just fake it.
Exactly. You can't just mimic the structure. The positive feelings, the high expectations, they have to be genuine, and they need to be communicated clearly, consistently, through actions as much as words. It's the real belief that counts.
Okay, but Livingston adds a note of caution here. It's not about just having crazy, unrealistic expectations, is it? That doesn't work either.
No, that's a really important distinction. Setting goals that are just completely unattainable, that can be just as demotivating as setting the bar too low.
Why is that?
Well, if people look at a target and think there's absolutely no way I can hit that, they're likely to just give up. Why pour energy into something that feels impossible?
That why bother feeling. Yeah. He mentioned some research on this, McClelland and Atkinson.
He does. Their work on motivation suggests, basically, that we're most motivated when we feel we have roughly a 50-50 chance of succeeding at something challenging.
Okay.
If it feels too easy, we're not really engaged. If it feels impossible, we check out. There's a kind of bell curve to it.
So finding that sweet spot, challenging but believable, and if people keep failing because the expectations are unrealistic, what happens then?
That can be really damaging, too. It can lead people to lower their own standards over time. They start to internalize the failure, develop negative attitudes about their own capabilities, about the job. It erodes self-belief, just like being underestimated does.
This all comes back to the manager, doesn't it?
Oh,
So
yeah.
what's the secret sauce for the really superior managers? The ones who consistently lift their teams?
Livingston argues a huge part of it is their own self-confidence, not arrogance, but a deep belief in their own ability to develop talent.
Ah, okay. So their high expectations for others stem from confidence in themselves as leaders.
Exactly. They believe they can select the right people, train them effectively, motivate them. Their high expectations are rooted in their conviction about their own skills in coaching and development.
It's like, I believe in you because I believe I can help you get there. He tells that incredible story. Sweeney's Miracle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Professor James Sweeney at Tulane. A fantastic example. Sweeney was convinced he could teach anyone computer operation.
Anyone.
That was his belief. And to prove it, he took on George Johnson. Johnson was working as a hospital porter, then became a janitor at the university's computer center. Limited formal education.
Okay.
Sweeney poured time and effort into training him. Real one-on-one coaching.
But wasn't there a point where, like, tests suggested Johnson couldn't do it?
Right. Johnson took an IQ test, and the results basically said he lacked the aptitude. Wouldn't even be able to master typing, let alone the complexities of computer operation back then.
So what did Sweeney do?
He dismissed the test results. He basically said, my teaching ability is better than this test's predictive power. His confidence in his own ability to teach was paramount. He staked his reputation on Johnson.
And the outcome. What happened with Johnson?
It was remarkable. Johnson didn't just learn to operate the computers. He became so proficient, he eventually took charge of the main computer room operations. And get this, he started training the new employees himself.
Wow. From janitor to computer operator and trainer, despite tests saying it was impossible.
It's a powerful illustration. Sweeney's unwavering belief in his own capacity to develop talent literally overrode perceived limitations and created exceptional performance.
That really drives the point home. The manager's belief in their own developmental ability fuels those high, realistic expectations. Now, Livingston also stresses that this dynamic is especially potent early in someone's career. Why are those early years so critical?
Because that's when our professional self-image is really being formed. When you're young, starting out, you're more receptive, maybe more malleable. The expectations and treatment from your first few managers, they sink in deep. They shape how you see yourself, what you think you're capable of.
Right. Later on, you have more of a track record. Your self-perception is maybe more fixed.
Exactly. As you gain experience, success, maybe some failures, your view of yourself becomes more interest based on that history. But early on, that manager's view can have an outsized impact.
It's like setting the trajectory. High expectations early on can put you on a path to expecting more from yourself.
Precisely. And remember that Berlew and Hall AT&T study we talked about?
Yeah.
They specifically found that connection between first-year expectations and long-term contribution. Meeting high expectations early helps people internalize positive attitudes and high standards for themselves.
So that first boss, they're not just giving you tasks. They're potentially shaping your whole career outlook and self-belief. That's huge.
It's profound. Livingston argues quite strongly that your first manager is often the most influential person in your entire working life.
Wow.
Think about it. A manager who doesn't develop you, who has low expectations. They can inadvertently lower your own standards, damage your self-image, make you cynical about work, might even drive you out of the profession or company.
Where's a good one?
A good one. Someone demanding but supportive who believes in you. They can set you up for a lifetime of achievement and satisfaction.
He shared that example, didn't he, of the young bank manager who was doing really well, and he credited...
Two exceptional early bosses, yes, mentors who believed in him from day one. And Livingston backs this up with other studies too. Insurance, car sales, showing that even salespeople with just average aptitude did much, much better if they started under a really competent manager with high expectations.
It really drives home that talent isn't the whole picture. It needs that nurturing environment, that managerial belief, to really blossom. Now, what about selecting people? Do superior managers just have a knack for picking winners?
Well, Livingston suggests they're certainly very deliberate about it. They tend to select people they genuinely believe will succeed. Remember Alfred Oberlander?
From Metropolitan Life, yeah.
His philosophy was basically, if I hire you, I expect you to be top-notch. Period.
So the high expectation starts right at the selection stage. That's powerful in itself.
It is.
Yeah.
And, they might not always be able to perfectly articulate why they think someone will succeed. Sometimes it's intuition, judging potential,
Whoa.
drive, fit, intangible things.
And because they invested their judgment in picking someone.
They're often slower to give up on them. If a subordinate struggles, it reflects on the manager's initial judgment, so they're more invested in finding ways to help that person succeed.
Yeah.
It's like, I picked you for a reason, let's make this work.
That makes sense. A different level of commitment. But on the flip side, Livingston flags a pretty worrying trend in how many companies handle their new young talent.
Yes, this is a critical point he raises. Too often, he argues, companies put their bright, promising new graduates under, well, their least experienced managers.
Really? Why would they do that?
Often it's just how structures work. First-line supervisors are often newer managers themselves. But the consequence is that the people with the most potential are being mentored or not mentored by those with the least skill in developing talent.
That seems completely backward, doesn't it? You'd want your best prospects learning from your best leaders.
You'd think so. But this common practice, he says, leads to underdevelopment, potential gets wasted, negative attitudes can form early on. He connects it to rising turnover rates among young professionals.
They get disillusioned and leave.
That's a big part of it. They don't feel challenged or supported or developed. He specifically calls out high turnover among college grads in sales roles, blaming ineffective first-line management.
And he also mentions the generation gap thing.
Yeah, briefly. He suggests sometimes older managers might misunderstand or even resent younger graduates, maybe feeling threatened by their degrees or different perspectives. And that, unfortunately, can also translate into lower expectations, feeding that negative cycle.
So it's like companies are potentially squandering their future leaders by not putting them in the right initial environment.
That's exactly his concern, this underdevelopment and underutilization of young talent. He sees it as a major organizational challenge.
Okay, so if we bring this all together, the big takeaway from Livingston's Pygmalion in management is
Yeah.
really managers are hugely influential. They act like Pygmalions, shaping potential, performance, careers, just through their expectations and how they treat people.
That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it throws down a gauntlet, really, for organizations. The challenge is to develop managers who genuinely believe in their teams, who can foster that high performance and satisfaction, especially for the younger talent coming in. It's about cultivating that authentic belief and communicating it effectively.
This has been, wow, really eye opening. Such a simple core idea, but the implications are massive. And for everyone listening, maybe take a moment to think about this in your own experience, whether you manage people or you're being managed. How have expectations, high or low, played out for you? What are those subtle signals, maybe nonverbal ones, that communicate belief or lack of it in your workplace? Definitely something to chew on.